This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
We look at Africa's priorities in 2019 as African leaders deliver their annual New Year messages. The US closes its embassy in Nigeria indefinitely. And later we see some of the festivities around the globe as people rang in the new year. Happy New Year and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live. I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, 2/3 of Tanzania's forex bureaus to be locked out of business for non-compliance to new laws. And in sport, we look back at head coach Rassi Erasmus's first year in charge of the Springboks. Well, let's begin the bulletin in Cameroon, where President Paul Biya says that he's ready to end the ongoing security crisis in the country's English-speaking region. During his New Year's address to the nation, Biya said that he was willing to talk to the separatists. He also appealed for the laying down of weapons by militias in the country. Since the secessionists took up arms last year, attacks by their fighters and a crackdown by the authorities have led to the deaths of at least 500 civilians, as well as more than 200 members of the security forces. That's according to the International Crisis Group. Well, elsewhere, Gabon's President Ali Bongo has addressed the country for the first time since suffering a stroke on October the 24th. In a New Year's message recorded in Morocco, Bongo acknowledged that he'd been facing a difficult time and thanked the Gabonese people for standing by him. He also expressed optimism for a full recovery. Well, those are just a few of the leaders that spoke on New Year's Eve. Many more across the African continent sent goodwill to their citizens. Well, to sample some of the messages, we're now joined in the studio by CGTN's Robert Nagila, as well as Angelo Coppola in South Africa, and in Cairo, Yasser Hakim is there for us. Well, let's start with you first, Angelo, in Johannesburg. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's New Year message focused on job creation, saying that it would be high on the agenda for 2019. Any other issues that are likely to dominate the scene?
Well, Karen, the bottom line here is that Ramaphosa has put that $100 billion target in place. He started that in 2018. He's hoping to accomplish that $100 billion investment target in 5 years in South Africa, so that's the key driver for him. As you mentioned, unemployment is the major issue here. 27.5% of the country's population, that's the employable population, are unemployed. And unless there's economic growth from that $100 billion, for example, they're not going to be able to tackle those numbers and bring that 27.5% down anyway meaningfully. He's also focusing on the state-owned entities. He's put some action plans in place. Most recently, he put a task team in place at Eskom to oversee what's happening between management and the board and see how they're going to get out of that crisis. So that's the other big issue. And of course, he's going to and has started to tackle corruption. That's the big elephant in the room and has to be dealt with decisively in 2019. Karen?
Okay, thank you very much. That was Angelo in Johannesburg. We'll return to you in a moment. Now over to you, Robert. Robert Nagila for us in the studio. Let's talk about Kenya now. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta highlighted national reconciliation and the war on corruption. What do you think 2019 has in store for Kenyans?
Well, thank you very much, Karen. A number of things, really. First, we expect to see the war on corruption escalated. This is the second time in less than a week that he was talking about corruption. 2018 was big. We saw some high-profile figures within the political establishment and outside it, within the business community, all hauled before Kenyan courts. So it looks like, according to many analysts, that the fight against corruption is going to be a huge part of his legacy, and he's really going for it. The other thing we're going to be looking at is this reconciliation. Absolutely. And it does appear that we're going to start seeing more calls for a referendum to change the constitution so that we can look at a different system of governance. Whether that will go through or not remains to be seen, but we expect to see a lot more political rallies looking at the referendum. The economy is also going to be big here. We're looking at Kenya's debt. The analysts have said that it's very high and the government needs to do something about it to bring the cost of our debt down. We know that borrowing for small businesses has been a problem because of debt. So we expect to see some movement on all those fronts in 2019.
So three major areas there: corruption, reconciliation and the debt problem. Let's now go over to you, Yasser, in Cairo. What appears to be the key message coming out of North Africa as we usher in the new year?
Yes, Karen, two major issues here in North Africa, and it's obviously economy, trying to rebuild economies that have been shattered by the political upheavals in the last few years. The Egyptian president has specifically mentioned this as a main challenge going into 2019, to continue the economic reforms and austerity measures that has been tough on the peoples of these countries, but that are inevitable to try to create the proper living conditions for the nations. And the other issue is obviously continuing the war on terrorism. Terrorism has been a big issue in this region in the last few years as well, and a war continues on terrorists in North Africa, and there is hope that 2019 would bear even better results concerning the war on terrorism.
Okay, thank you for that, Yasser. So that was the economy and the war on terrorism being the two main focus points there. Let's now return to you, Angelo, in Johannesburg. Getting into 2019, what's likely to dominate South Africa's domestic and regional scene?
Karen, there are a couple of major issues. We have a major national election happening in May that will see the ANC fighting against the opposition parties. It's expected that that majority that the ANC had come into this next election with will probably be reduced. Then we have the Zondo Commission, which is looking at state capture or corruption within state-owned entities. That's due to start operating again in the middle of January, towards the end of January. We're hoping to see some more explosive revelations there. Then, of course, ex-President Jacob Zuma may well get his day in court this year around those corruption allegations related to the arms deal around 15 years ago. So that might come to a close. And then finally, I guess the most important thing is the fact that the country is now getting ready for a new ANC government, as it were. It could be a coalition government, but it's very likely that we'll see that majority reduced, and that's going to probably change the face of politics in South Africa. So the key issues are corruption-focused, dealing with the economy, and getting the country ready for that growth spurt that we so badly need. Karen?
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was Angelo Coppola there in Johannesburg on what South Africa will be focusing on in the new year. Let's now return to Robert with us in the studio. We've witnessed planned meetings for the leaders from the East African community cancelled at the 11th hour. What are the chances of the EAC holding together?
Well, regional analysts are going to be trying to answer that question in 2019. Now, East African communities' problems are twofold. One is political, the other is financial. The November Heads of State meeting, which fell apart at the last minute, or collapsed rather, because President Pierre Nkurunziza of Burundi would not attend. We understand the reason behind that was because he felt that the current chair, which is President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, was not taking his concerns seriously. What those concerns are, we probably will get to know as the year goes by. Burundi at the moment seems to be the outsider. They seem to have a problem. President Pierre Nkurunziza with President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, President Pierre Nkurunziza with President Museveni as well. So these need to be sorted out before it can move. But there are also other problems below the surface: Kenya, Tanzania, trade spats, and so on. So all these need to be looked at. On the financial side, all these countries are supposed to contribute an equal amount of just over $8 million. Now, you look at the 2018-2019 financial year, we understand none of the East African Community member states have fulfilled their financial obligations. They've not given the entire amount they need for budgetary support. On top of that, you've got South Sudan, the newest member, that has not contributed anything at all. So all these issues will have to be sorted out if this East African community is going to forge a path forward.
So a lot of work to go there.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert Nigila. Now, let's return to you, Yasser Hakim, who is in Cairo for us. What are President Fattah al-Sisi's key concerns going into the new year? Do you foresee the Egyptian government embracing some degree of dialogue with militant groups, or do you think it will sustain the military campaign?
Obviously, continuing the military campaign is essential. The Egyptian president made it clear there will be no dialogue with terrorists. It's the only trying to eradicate the country from militant groups, some of them that are from inside the country, others that try to infiltrate from neighboring Libya. And at the same time, he thinks, and he said, that the strategy continuing in 2019 is based on 3 items. First of all, the military side we talked about, which continues because even the number of attacks has dropped by 90% in 2018 compared to 2015, the peak year. So there's been a lot of improvement on that side. But there's also 2 other angles that need to have quick action as well to fight terrorism, and that is to try to fight extremist thoughts. And there's a higher committee that has been established just yesterday on the last day of the year, and it's meant to fight extremism, not terrorism, but extremist thinking, and it will work with other organizations in the country to try to promote moderate Islam and not to try to fight the extremist thinking that leads to terrorism in the future. And that's the plan going into 2019, to continue the military plan as it is, and also to fight extremist thought at the same time and balance the side on the terrorism front.
Okay, thank you very much. That was Yasser Hakim in Cairo. Also, we spoke to Angelo Coppola in South Africa, and of course, Robert Nigila in the studio. Thank you to all of them. Moving on now, Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent his New Year's message to the nation, including his expectations for the next 12 months.
2019年，我们将隆重庆祝中华人民共和国70周年华诞。70年披荆斩棘，70年风雨兼程。人民是共和国的坚实根基，人民是我们执政的最大底气。一路走来，中国人民自力更生，艰苦奋斗，创造了举世瞩目的中国奇迹。新征程上，不管乱云飞渡、风吹浪打，我们都要紧紧依靠人民，坚持自力更生，艰苦奋斗，以坚如磐石的信心，只争朝夕的劲头，坚韧不拔的毅力，一步一个脚印，把前无古人的伟大事业推向前进。2019年有机遇，也有挑战，大家还要一起拼搏，一起奋斗。减税降费政策措施要落地生根，让企业轻装上阵。要真诚尊重各种人才，充分激发他们创新创造活力。要倾听基层干部心声，让敢担当、有作为的干部有干劲、有奔头。农村1000多万贫困人口的脱贫任务要如期完成，还得咬定目标，使劲干。要关爱退役军人，他们为保家卫国做出了贡献。这个时候，快递小哥、环卫工人、出租车司机以及千千万万的劳动者还在辛勤工作， 我们要感谢这些美好生活的创造者、守护者，大家辛苦了。放眼全球，信心和决心不会变，中国维护世界和平、促进共同发展的诚意和善意不会变。我们将积极推动共建“一带一路”，继续推动构建人类命运共同体，为建设一个更加繁荣美好的世界而不懈努力。新年的钟声即将敲响，让我们满怀信心和期待，一同迎接2019年的到来。祝福中国，祝福世界，谢谢大家。
Well, there's been a series of reactions to Chinese President Xi Jinping's New Year's speech for 2019, and it's also produced a fulsome response in South Africa. Dan Plato, the mayor of Cape Town, says that China has achieved remarkable results in development over the past 40 years of reform and opening up.
Looking at President Xi's statement, he is talking a lot about development, the macro developments in China. And at the end of the day, they also have a good relationship with South Africa, with the South African government in particular. So on behalf of Cape Town and also as a citizen of South Africa, look, we applaud the good relationship. That is how it should be. Countries must work together. China is a big player in the world. It is one of the big three superpowers in the world, and China is really doing its best to spread its wings worldwide.
To the Democratic Republic of Congo now, and both the opposition and the ruling coalition have claimed victory in the country's long-delayed presidential election. Vote tallying began on Monday after Sunday's volatile poll that's been postponed since 2016. The vote is meant to pick a successor to incumbent President Joseph Kabila, who's been in power for the last 18 years. Results began trickling in online, but shortly afterwards, internet access was either slowed down or shut down completely.
They're afraid perhaps of the publication of the results of the elections. They do not want it to circulate on the internet so that everyone has their results well before the publication, because there's a worry that the results will be tampered with.
It annoys us because we are in the festive period. We have our friends and relatives who are abroad. We need the internet to communicate with them. But because they cut the networks, we cannot get in touch to communicate.
Vote counting is underway in the Democratic Republic of Congo a day after the long-delayed polls were held. Voting went well into the night due to delays in delivering election materials. Some areas had missing voter rolls and malfunctioned voting machines.
Polls closed on Sunday in most parts of the country, but the Electoral Commission extended the exercise in polling centers like this one in the Ngaliema neighborhood to allow people who failed to vote because of the late delivery of materials to do so.
Observers from the Catholic Church commended the Electoral Commission for organizing the polls.
The polling stations were open to all people, and the exercise generally went well.
But there were reports of violence in the eastern part of the country, which left 4 people dead.
I'm very happy about how the voting went.
The elections went very well. I'm happy.
The provisional results will be announced within a week, and the final one on January the 15th. The new president will be sworn in 3 days later. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
In Nigeria, the US has closed its embassy in the country indefinitely. Thousands of Nigerians are expected to be affected, as most will miss their visa appointments. The closure is a spillover from the shutdown of the US government after the executive arm, led by President legislative arm failed to agree over Trump's attempt to build a wall along the Mexican border. Well, the Mexican government refused to fund the construction and Congress rejected President Trump's proposal. Well, for more on this, we are now joined by CGTN's Deji Badmus, who is in Lagos for us. What is the reaction there over these developments, both from locals and authorities? And what are the implications of the shutdown to the country and to US-Nigeria ties?
Well, Karen, this news has just come out, and the country is it's a holiday period in the country now, and so a lot of people do not know yet. They'll begin to feel the impact or get to know about it, and we're going to get more reactions when the holidays are over and their work resumes. Of course, as you know, the implication is that a lot of Nigerians would be affected, especially those who might have been planning to maybe travel after the holiday, who would definitely be seeking visa services. They would be affected. Other than that, I do not see how this would affect relations between Nigeria and the United States. This is a U.S. domestic issue, and everybody is aware of what is going on in the U.S. now. Everybody knows about the government shutdown, but no doubt that those who are planning to seek visa services now from the U.S. Embassy in Abuja and the consulate here in Lagos would definitely be affected. And the hope is that this wouldn't last for long, and that maybe, as we're hearing, that maybe by January 3rd, everything will return to normalcy, and then the embassy might reopen. So the good thing is that, look, it's a holiday here, and people wouldn't feel the effect that much, especially if all of this is over by the 3rd of January.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was CGTN's Deji Badmus there in Lagos on the shutting down of the US Embassy in Nigeria. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including President Xi and Trump exchange congratulations to mark the anniversary. And security forces provide Mali refugees with much needed medical services.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, today is not only New Year's Day, but also the 40th anniversary of diplomatic ties between China and the US. President Xi and President Trump have exchanged congratulations to mark the occasion just 3 days after their recent phone call. President Xi said bilateral relations have experienced ups and downs, but also made historic progress over the years. He said that progress has contributed greatly to world peace, stability and prosperity, and history has proved cooperation is the best choice. President Xi added that China was willing to work with the US to ensure the healthy growth of their ties. Trump, for his part, hailed the progress made in bilateral ties over the past 40 years. He said his priority is to promote cooperative and constructive relations with China. Meanwhile, DPRK's leader Kim Jong-un has reaffirmed his commitment to denuclearization in his New Year address, saying that he's ready to meet with American President Donald Trump again.
I'm ready to sit with the US President again at any time in the future, and will make efforts by all means to produce a result that will be welcomed by the international community.
In Russia, at least 7 people are known to have died after a gas explosion rocked a residential building. About 40 others could still be trapped in the rubble. The blast took place in the southern city of Magnitogorsk. The region's deputy governor said 3 people had been rescued from the rubble so far. The blast damaged dozens of apartments in the 10-story structure. A gas leak is thought to have caused the blast. President Vladimir Putin flew into Magnitogorsk late on New Year's Eve to visit the injured in hospital and to meet with local authorities. On to Somalia now, and the country's judicial reforms are facing a major impediment after it emerged that Al-Shabaab operate rival courts to that of the government. From Mogadishu, CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo reports now on why the latest revelation has angered Somali authorities.
Authorities in Somalia have warned locals against seeking justice in militant-controlled areas. Al-Shabaab maintains a huge presence in rural farmlands near major cities, operating makeshift courts to address cases related to business, marriage, inheritance and land ownership. Among those it targets include members of the business community, teachers and mostly women and children seeking justice from their husbands in case of divorce or separation.
It is unacceptable to travel to Al-Shabaab-controlled areas to seek justice. Our courts are competent enough to handle all sorts of disputes. We have arrested and will continue the crackdown on individuals who lost cases in our courts and got to Al-Shabaab for sympathy.
Last year, 7 school teachers were arrested north of Mogadishu after traveling to militant-controlled regions to discuss changing the school curriculum at private institutions to favor the group's ideology. Experts say that fear is the main reason as to why locals travel to militant-controlled areas to seek justice. Cases solved by Al-Shabaab courts are often solved in a short period of time compared to other courts. Decisions reached by these courts cannot be appealed, thus making it favorable for those seeking an end to lengthy cases.
Last week, we sentenced 3 individuals for using fake documents in a court of law. We are warning citizens against going to Al-Shabaab to seek justice. We will not tolerate such a practice.
Last week, the country's president appointed 4 new judges to the Supreme Court in a move aimed at improving judicial decisions and allegations of corruption. More training has also been provided to prosecutors and judges as Mogadishu seeks to strengthen its justice sector and see a return of rule of law to the once lawless nation. Abdulaziz Billo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Collecting and distributing donations as well as preparing food for the needy are the main tasks and objectives of Red Vests in Tunisia. Some volunteers have created a network of social workers who help the most vulnerable and the homeless in Tunisia.
These volunteers are cooking tasty meals for strangers they have never met. They are united for the homeless and the unlucky people who were rejected by the Tunisian society.
We provide assistance to elderly people, the handicapped, single mothers and citizens who come to Tunis for medical treatment. Those who have nowhere to go. Social emergency is a priority for the state and the civil society.
Tunisia's Red Vests do not only feed the poor and needy, they are also providing support for those experiencing homelessness during the cold winter nights. Finding a shelter is almost impossible without their assistance.
Saber is in his mid-30s. Every night, the man's main quest is to look for shelter in downtown Tunis. He has been abandoned by his family. However, these volunteers always remember to visit Saber before going home.
I have lived in the streets for 9 years. My health is deteriorating. I thank the volunteers for providing food and medical treatment. They are my friends and family. I hope to find a permanent shelter and a job. I don't want to spend my life in the streets.
The Red Vests are working under the umbrella association United for Humanity. Hiba and her colleagues are extremely vigilant, especially while working with children who have been abandoned by their parents.
Children are very vulnerable. We talk to them and sometimes play the role of their relatives. In addition to having food and a shelter, which is a universal right, kids can also succeed at school and have a better life. We must encourage them and give them hope.
Tunisia's Red Vests are active in 4 regions across the country. Some volunteers and donors were former homeless people who have succeeded in life after facing social and economic difficulties. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, we are going to a break now. Don't go away. We've got all the business news coming up.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues for taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
In Japan, former Nissan boss Carlos Ghosn will be spending the first few days of the new year behind bars after a Tokyo court extended his detention until January the 11th. It comes after prosecutors rearrested Ghosn over fresh allegations on December the 21st. Since his arrest last month, he's been taken into custody twice over allegations that he underreported his Nissan salary for a prolonged period. Netflix has announced that Bird Box, a Netflix original thriller directed by Suzanne Bier, was viewed by 45 million accounts in its first 7 days on the service. The figure, however, has not been independently assessed by industry experts. A Netflix view is said to count when a film is watched past the 70% mark of its total running time, including credits. This is on the operation of a one account, one view basis. Producers had been calling for more statistics and information from Netflix before the announcement. In Tanzania, only about a third of forex bureaus have complied with a new law on forex business in the country that requires them to re-register. Around 109 out of 297 forex bureaus, which existed before the start of the new registration requirements were passed, have complied. Finance and Planning Minister Philip Mpango said that the 188 bureaus that did not meet the new threshold now face deregistration. When South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a task team to have oversight on the Eskom board and management in late December, the utility was in dire straits, with load shedding becoming a daily occurrence. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more.
Load shedding has mostly been avoided since the middle of December, mainly because most businesses closed for the Christmas holidays and demand on the system has dropped significantly. The company also recently retrenched several senior executives. Others took a different approach.
Many of them have bite the bullet, and that's why they are willing to take a downgrade of their positions to a general manager level instead of executive level.
The task team has been monitoring management actions and will report back to President Ramaphosa at the end of January. This while the board and management attempt to develop a turnaround strategy.
Quite frankly, from our end, we don't have a view necessarily, because the shareholder has every right to do what they have to do in terms of helping this company.
The problems at Eskom seem to be unresolved, and it's very likely that when people return back to work in the middle of January, there are going to be rolling blackouts. And this isn't good news for potential local and foreign investors.
But the investors want certainty, and one of the certainties, despite the political issues, they want certainty around small things like a security of power supply, and currently this company cannot give that.
I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Egyptian capital has hosted the second edition of Cairo Food Africa exhibition. The event aims to create opportunities for agricultural producers to market their products and also increase trade. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with the details.
Over 300 companies from around 30 countries gathered in Cairo to showcase their products at the Food Africa Fair.
Trade fair is a huge opportunity, not only for Egypt but for the African countries, to work together on intra-trade among Africa, and also facilitation of trade with the world. It's an opportunity for all the sectors, also for countries and nations, and to present their potentials.
The products on display range from food to equipment and machinery for agricultural industries. Producers hope exhibitions such as this one would help increase their sales and marketing targets.
Our products have a good presence in the local market for some time now, and we are doing fine. We are here because our plans are to expand to the rest of the continent, enter new markets in Africa and Arab countries, and this is a good venue for doing so.
The fair also attracted many companies from outside the continent.
We have lots of traction from several countries, not only from Africa. We have visitors from Ukraine, visitors from Kenya, visitors from Brazil, visitors from Malaysia. The exhibition actually gives us opportunity to network with people from actually suppliers. We can meet with different suppliers from all over the globe. We can also explore export potentials to countries in the Middle East, in the MENA, or even in Far East Asia. So we have both advantages, either to find suppliers or to export to different countries.
Chinese producers had a strong showing as well.
Our main product is sunflower seeds, and the requirement of sunflower seeds in Egypt is very large. Even the raw material, not the roasted one. Yeah, but we do both the raw material and the roasted one with salted or fragrant and spicy or other flavors. From yesterday until now, many people and some of the potential customers come here. Yeah, and we think it's the best chance for us.
According to the UN, Africa has about 65% of the world's arable land. However, agricultural output stands at an average of only 2% of GDP per country, and Africa remains a net importer of food. Increasing food production is essential for the continent. At the African Union meetings, leaders have promised that starting 2019, they will allocate 10% of their state budgets for increasing agricultural production. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
CGTN Africa reporters have also had memorable times while covering various stories that shape the African continent. Here's CGTN's Africa's business reporter, Sumitra Naidu, speaking about key events that she covered.
My highlight in 2018 was covering the controversial land issue. The Constitution is about to be amended to allow for land expropriation without compensation. I wanted to explore this, understand the history and how this will impact South Africans and the economy. I travelled to Badplaas and Mpumalanga in the eastern part of the country to spend some time with the community that had their land taken away from them during apartheid in 1913 to be precise. Many from that time perished without any justice. Some descendants finally received the land back some 80 years later. It was meant to be a story of triumph, which it was, because this community received the land back. So it was back in the late 1990s when the chief of the Ndwandwe community put in an application with government to reclaim this land. In 2004, the application was granted, and according to the title deeds, the chief received 23,000 hectares of land. But after spending time with the chief and his community as part of my case study, I realized the immense pain suffered, how people lost their land, their homes, their livelihoods, their dignity in an unjust and criminal manner. For me, this was an important story to unpack because it is massively complex. And even though this push for land reform is meant to deliver some justice, I don't think it's ever going to undo the crimes of the past and the physical and emotional damage it caused.
My highlight for the year was Barcelona coming to Mzansi. That was great. And recently Beyonce and Jay-Z.
On a personal level, it was definitely buying my new car. It was a dream come true. On a community, on a national government type level, definitely the SARS Commission, the Zondo Commission. I'm sincerely hoping that 2019 will see a wrap up of that. And those criminals that are responsible for state capture and for bringing down SOEs is put behind bars.
My highlight for 2018 was when I moved into my own apartment. Yeah, that was something else for me.
Well, we are going to a break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including we take a look at some of the festivities around the globe as people rang in the new year.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
In Mali, locals enjoy free medical checkups provided by security forces in the remote village of Dangaten. Since renewal of its mandate by the United Nations Security Council last June, the UN mission in Mali's directive to protect civilians and their property has been extended to the centre of the country since the outbreak of violence in 2012.
Regular military operations have been intensified to secure different inaccessible areas.
It is a security operation to support the civilian component of the mission while working. Their work is essential for the stabilization. It is a reconciliation project and the force is there to support them.
Among some of the programs offered to locals by the security forces is access to health care.
We are here in the voluntary and humanitarian framework to help remote populations to cover their immediate health needs. Since we do not have all the necessary paraphernalia, we do our best to thank some of the recurrent pathologies.
As with many parts of Africa, health issues such as child malnutrition and eye diseases for the elderly are often neglected.
We are treating mostly elderly people for articular chronic diseases like arthritis and particularly ocular problems. These are diseases that we cannot treat with our means. Diseases like cataracts, glaucoma and other priority pathologies like more specific approaches.
Among the beneficiaries of the free medical consultations was County Warren, a 62-year-old woman.
After consultation, medications are prescribed and offered. After being consulted by the doctor, I feel relieved. I have been consulted by a doctor. He did a good job.
The unprecedented scale of violence started in the country in 2012 and led to widespread displacement and recurrence of human rights violations against civilians living in this area. The violence began when separatist Tuareg rebels seized large parts of the north of Mali, following a military coup in the capital Bamako, forcing thousands to flee. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
In Cape Town in South Africa, thousands of revellers flocked to see the annual New Year's Eve fireworks display at the world-famous V&A waterfront. Rennie Delcam has more.
Thousands of South Africans and tourists from around the world packed Cape Town's world-famous waterfront to ring in 2019, an annual event that's become a major highlight on the Cape Town calendar.
The waterfront is one of the most visited destinations on the continent. It's equally loved by locals and international visitors. Cape Town really does well to position the country on the international map, and the V&A is one of the areas that really people gravitate towards. And what we find here is a diversity of cultures and languages that are spoken here.
Many in the crowd said 2018 had been a tough year, and this year they wished for greater health and wealth, as well as peace, tolerance and prosperity.
My wish for 2019 is to stop being broke for myself, and then for my family is for them to live in abundance of joy, happiness and fulfillment.
Peace, love, harmony,
just for the whole world, people to enjoy life and to do whatever they need to do without any disruptions in terms of politics and interference from the state.
For 2019, I wish prosperity and success for my family and myself and my friends. Yes.
Happy New Year, all the world for 2019, all my family, all my friends. I wish you all happy for New Year.
My wish for 2019 is to have a normal life. I'm from a very difficult country. There are a lot of ups and downs, and all I wish is for it to be normal.
If I could round it up for myself and my family, I think it would be contentment and peace that just surpasses all understanding, no matter what challenges that 2019 might have.
In his New Year's message to his people, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says as South Africans celebrate the dawn of a new year, the country will be called upon to focus and work hard to confront its problems and usher in new opportunities for all its people.
Fellow South Africans, in 2019, we will celebrate 25 years of freedom and democracy. Let us give one another the gifts of tolerance, patience, safety, and respect. I wish you and yours a successful and peaceful 2019. Happy New Year to all of you.
On behalf of the V&A Waterfront and on behalf of South Africa, we want to wish everybody across the world a fantastic 2019.
Happy New Year! From Cape Town!
Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And now we sample more New Year messages from the continent.
I expect something better than 2018. Having completed school, I expect myself to get employment, something good to earn me a living, support my parents. I have a good life, of course, as a girl.
You know, we have now into the new year. We have left 2018, we are now in 2019. So I hope this year will be a success for me because I'm well determined to do well in my career and to make this world a better place.
I purpose to be a better leader, yes. I don't want to just stop at being my own person. I want to be a leader for others, for the young girls out there, an exemplary mother and a good wife and a better woman.
Well, we've got all the sport coming up after the break, including we look back at head coach Rassie Erasmus's first year in charge of the Springboks.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point. Only on CGTN.
It's been an interesting year for the two-time world champions, South Africa. They've appointed a new coach and in the process managed to claim an historic victory over their old foes, New Zealand, in New Zealand. But with a few months until the 2019 World Cup, how far have the Springboks come under Rassie Erasmus? CGTN's Dias du Plessis has more.
The South African head coach emerged from the doldrums of 2017 and knew that he had a massive task at hand. The former world champions were a team low in confidence and very low in support from the public. The new man in charge needed to start winning games and restore pride in the famous green and gold jersey.
The bottom line is, we all know, the KPIs is there and it's winning. If you win, you will stay in the job. If you don't win, you will quickly move out of the job. It's always been like that and it will always stay like that.
Fast forward 9 months and Erasmus and his band of merry men have won 7 out of their 14 tests in 2018, including a series victory over England and a famous win over the All Blacks in New Zealand. Their first triumph away to their rivals for almost a decade.
If I rate them, it's a tough call to make because I think they've really done well. I would say a 7. just because I think, you know, the potential is there for this team to grow so much more and to become an absolute great team. They've shown signs of it this year and they've played great rugby. I think we're all excited about the Boks and excited about next year.
The future appears bright, and as former Springbok winger Konan Dungane explains, Erasmus has managed to restore faith in the Springbok team less than a year out from the World Cup.
The bigger plan for him is obviously the World Cup. So, and I think he's built a nice squad, he's built a nice depth in the team. So I think for me, you know, he's doing a great job.
When Erasmus took charge, he had 18 games to go until the World Cup in Japan. Now he has less than 4. But for some rugby scribes, a lot of hard work still needs to be done for the Springboks to be considered title contenders in Japan.
The signs are good, and South Africans are upbeat about what's happened in the last year after the Alistair Coetzee era. And things are looking to be on the up, but like I say, I think we need to see a more consistent Springbok team in action.
There certainly were more positives for the Springboks in 2018 than in the past 2 years, where doubt, inconsistency and public resentment reared their ugly heads. Erasmus admits there's plenty work to do and has reportedly given himself a 5 out of 10 for the year.